I'm going to read Where is Daddy? A Story of Divorce, written by Beth Goff and illustrated by Susan Pearl. Once there was a little girl called Janie Dear. She lived in a house with her daddy and mommy and a dog named Funny. Her daddy named the dog Funny because that's what he was, and her daddy called Jane Janie Dear because that's what she was. Daddy was an important person. He went to work and earned the money that Mommy used to buy groceries with. Sometimes he played with Janie Dear and Funny, and they laughed a lot. Sometimes, though, he didn't want to play, and he'd be angry at Janie if she made too much noise. Then Janie would be angry at him. Mommy said Daddy only scolded because he had headaches and didn't feel well. Janie guessed she knew about that because sometimes when she had colds, she felt bad too. But it was always disappointing when Daddy didn't want to play. One morning, Funny was eating breakfast from his bowl on the kitchen floor, while Janie was eating hers at the kitchen table. Mommy was frying pancakes. "Where's Daddy?" Janie asked. Mommy didn't answer. "Is he still asleep?" Janie asked. After a minute, Mommy said, "Daddy isn't here. When will he be back?" Mommy went to the sink and turned on the water. The water sprayed out as it came down, and it looked white. "White water," Janie said, "like the edges of waves." Then she remembered about Daddy. "When is Daddy coming home?" "I don't know," Mommy said. Janie got a sudden full-up feeling in her stomach and didn't want to eat any more pancakes. She slid off her chair and sat down on the floor beside Funny. "You and Funny and I will be keeping house for a while," Mommy said. Janie didn't say anything. Daddy didn't come home for a few days. Janie felt lonesome for him. Mommy was nice most of the time, but she didn't want to play. Only Funny was fun. Janie wondered if Daddy stayed away because he was angry at her. But then he did come, and Janie was so glad to see him. He took her to the beach. Not Mommy, not Funny, just Janie Dear. They played in the white water where the waves ended, and sat in the sand and made sandhouse. Then they played Pick Up a Million Seashells, and Daddy wrote Janie's name with seashells in the sand like this: Janie Dear. "Write your name," Janie said, and he did, like this: Daddy. "Now Mommy's name," Janie said, but he didn't. Janie said, "Go on, Daddy, write Mommy's name." Daddy said, "Janie Dear, Mommy and I are getting a divorce." Janie asked, "What's that?" and she knew from the way he said it, it wasn't something nice. Daddy tried to explain, but it was hard for Janie to listen. She was watching the waves one after another, never quite the same. "Why does the water turn white?" she asked. "Oh, never mind." Dad sounded cross. "It's time to go home." When they got home, Daddy came into the house. Janie wanted to keep him there, so she tried to sit on his lap every minute. When Mommy said she had to go to bed, Janie said no, and made a great fuss. Then Mommy and Daddy began yelling at each other, and Janie howled at the top of her lungs because she was so sorry that she'd made such a fuss and didn't want them to yell like that. When they put her to bed and went downstairs, Janie could still hear her Mommy and Daddy's voices going up and down, sometimes soft, sometimes shouty. The anger between them made a pain inside her, and she cried and cried. After a long, long time, Daddy came in, and he stood by her bed saying, Janie Dear, until she stopped crying. Then he said, "I will always be your daddy just the same." He sounded nice, and Janie Dear was very, very sleepy, so she went to sleep. Next morning, Mommy said the same thing. Daddy will always be your daddy, but he wasn't there. He'd gone away again. Mommy said, "You and Funny and I will go to live with your grandma." Janie didn't say anything, and Mommy asked, "You like Grandma, don't you?" "I guess so," Janie said. Janie liked Grandma most of the time, but she didn't like Grandma's house. Nobody ever wanted to play except Funny, and Funny wished they were in their real house too. Grandma tried to keep Funny outside. This made both Janie and her dog unhappy, And Janie cried and yelled at Grandma, and Grandma said she was a bad girl. Whenever Janie asked Mommy when they could go home, Mommy didn't answer. Sometimes Janie yelled at Mommy because it made her mad not to know when they could go home. It made her mad that Daddy went away. Janie knew it was bad to yell so much, but she just couldn't help it. Then the worst thing happened. Mommy got a job and was gone all day, like Daddy used to be. A great big fear grew inside of Janie. She was afraid her Mommy would go away for all the time, like Daddy had. So Janie begged Mommy not to leave. Mommy promised she would come home every night, but Grandma said Mommy would never want to come home at all if Janie was bad and angry and cried so much. Janie remembered that she had been angry at Daddy sometimes before he went away. She used to get mad at him when he didn't want to play. Janie decided it must be very, very bad to be angry because terrible things happened. When she knew she must never say anything angry again, never ever. And so she said hardly anything at all because if she did talk, even a little, some angerness might leak out and then Mommy would go away forever. Mommy said, "Janie used to be my chatterbox. What's the matter, darling?" But Janie didn't tell her. Grandma said she must be coming down with something. So Mommy took Janie to the doctor, but he couldn't find what was wrong. Janie didn't even fuss when Grandma chased Funny out the house. One day, Janie went out to talk to Funny, but Funny wasn't there. Janie called him twice, 3 times, 7 times. Finally, Funny came. All of a sudden, Janie was mad at Funny. She was so mad that she hit him and hit him. Funny yelped and ran away. Janie sat down hard on the ground. She had hurt Funny, and she felt bad about it and glad about it, both at the same time. "Janie!" It was Mommy. She had seen what Janie did. Janie thought she would scold, but Mommy just sat in a puzzled way. "Funny loves you, and you hit him." Janie yelled, "He went away like you and Daddy, and I hate him." Mommy sat right down on the ground beside Janie and hugged her until Janie was quiet. The next day, Mommy asked, "Janie, would you like to come downtown to see where Mommy works?" "Yes," Janie said. So that's what happened. Grandma and Janie went to Mommy's office, and Janie played with Mommy's typewriter and said hello to some people and saw where Mommy hung her coat and kept her pencils. Then Grandma and Janie went home. And Grandma said, "I guess it isn't much fun for you here, Janie. Come sit on Grandma's lap. I'll read you a story." Janie listened hard. When the story was over, she said, "Read it again, Grandma," and Grandma did. And every morning when she went to work, Mommy said, "Janie dear, remember, I'm coming back home tonight. I'm never going to stay away, never ever." And she always did come home. And Grandma began to be nicer to Funny, and she let him in the house sometimes. She even said he was quite a good dog. And when Jane asked about him, Mommy talked about Daddy. She explained that there were lots and lots of reasons why Daddy went away, but none of them was Janie's fault. Mommy said Janie was a good girl. She was Janie dear, so Daddy certainly didn't leave because she was bad. Daddy would come to see Janie whenever he possibly could, Mommy said. And pretty soon Daddy did come home, and Janie was so glad to see him. They went to the zoo. This time Janie knew that Daddy would go away again, but it was fun to be at the zoo. Janie held tight to Daddy's hand, and they watched the seals splash in the water. Janie asked, "Why does the water turn white?" And Daddy looked at her and said, "Bubbles, Janie dear. The seals splash in the air into the water, and it makes tiny little bubbles." "Oh," Janie said, "bubbles, bubbles, bubbles, bubbles." And she laughed and laughed, and Daddy laughed too. Janie dear felt much better. The end. Some interesting questions to spark conversation is, what is a divorce? Why do people get married, and why do people get a divorce? One fun activity is for everyone after reading this story to write down their feelings and how they feel about divorce. Thank you.